1 in 8.7 billion. That's the chance Adam Schiff's stock trades were coincidence. You're more likely to get struck by lightning twice while winning the lottery. But Senator John Kennedy had the receipts: 41 trades, all within 24 hours of classified briefings. Text messages saying, "Just got briefed on something big." Phone calls minutes after leaving top-secret meetings. 1.5D profits built on information that soldiers died to collect. And the whole time Schiff was on CNN lecturing America about ethics. Kennedy didn't just expose him. He buried him with statistics. With phone logs. With Schiff's own text messages read aloud in a Senate hearing. This is the story of how one man's greed became a paper trail that destroyed him. Senator John Kennedy didn't look like a man holding a loaded gun. He looked like someone's grandfather sorting through old tax returns. Reading glasses perched on his nose. Manila folders spread across the desk in neat stacks. A yellow legal pad covered in his careful handwriting. The harsh fluorescent lights of the Senate Ethics Committee hearing room reflected off his silver hair as he made notes with a ballpoint pen. Seemingly oblivious to the crowd filing in behind him. But anyone who knew Kennedy really knew him would have recognized the signs. The slight upturn at the corner of his mouth. The way his pen moved with unusual precision. The deliberate slowness with which he reviewed each document as if savoring a fine wine before the first sip. Adam Schiff entered at precisely 9:58 a.m., 2 minutes before the scheduled start time. Just late enough to make an entrance, just early enough to appear respectful. He wore a navy suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. His tie perfectly knotted. His posture radiating the confidence of a man who'd survived worse rooms than this. He'd been on the House Intelligence Committee for 17 years. He'd led impeachment proceedings. He'd stared down presidents. A Senate ethics inquiry. Please. This was Tuesday. Schiff took his seat at the witness table, adjusted the microphone, and poured himself water from the carafe provided. His hands were steady. His expression was neutral, professional, with just a hint of the exhaustion that came from being, as he'd told CNN last week, constantly targeted by partisan attacks. The gallery was unusually full for an ethics hearing. Reporters from major networks, congressional staffers, even a few faces Schiff recognized from the FBI's Congressional Liaison Office. Which was odd but not alarming. Ethics investigations often drew interagency interest. Chairman Lindsey Graham gave the hearing to order at 1000 a.m. exactly. This committee convenes to examine certain allegations regarding Representative Adam Schiff's financial activities during his tenure on the House Intelligence Committee. Senator Kennedy, you have the floor. Kennedy looked up from his documents as if surprised to hear his name. Though of course he'd been waiting for exactly this moment. He removed his reading glasses, folded them carefully, and placed them on top of the nearest stack of folders. When he spoke, his voice carried that slow Louisiana drawl that had lulled many opponents into underestimating him right before he destroyed them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate Representative Schiff making time for us today. I know your schedule is demanding. Schiff nodded graciously. Happy to be here, Senator. A whole bet you are. Kennedy said so softly that only the front row caught it. Then louder. Representative Schiff, how long have you served on the House Intelligence Committee? 17 years. Senator, 17 years. That's quite a tenure. You must have received a considerable amount of classified briefings in that time. Thousands. Schiff confirmed. It's part of my responsibility. And you understand the rules governing classified information. The restrictions on how it can be used. Schiff's spine straightened slightly. His lawyer radar was pinging. Of course. I've held a security clearance for nearly 2 decades. I understand both the letter and the spirit of those regulations. The spirit, Kennedy repeated as if tasting the word. Ah, like that. So you understand it would be improper. Putting it mildly, to use classified information for personal gain. It would be unconscionable, Schiff said firmly, and there was real heat in his voice now. Any member of Congress who would abuse their access to classified information for profit would be betraying their oath and betraying the American people. Kennedy's smile was so faint it barely registered. But it was there. Unconscionable. Appreciate you putting it that way. Representative, let's remember you said that word, unconscionable. He made a note on his legal pad underlining something twice. Now let me ask you about your personal finances. Do you personally manage your stock portfolio? The question seemed to relax Schiff slightly. Financial disclosure questions were routine. No, Senator. I have a financial advisor who handles my investments. I'm far too busy with my congressional duties to micromanage my portfolio. And who is this financial advisor? Marcus Steinberg of Steinberg Wealth Management? Does Mr. Steinberg have power of attorney over your accounts? Limited power of attorney? Yes. For routine trades and portfolio rebalancing. It's a standard arrangement. So, you don't personally execute trades. You don't personally call your broker and say, buy this or sell that? No, Schiff said. I leave those decisions to Mr. Steinberg. That's what I pay him for. Kennedy nodded slowly, making another note. Because you're too busy. Exactly. Too busy running the Intelligence Committee among other responsibilities. Yes, handling all that classified information. Schiff's eyes narrowed slightly. Yes. Kennedy looked up, met Schiff's gaze, held it for a long moment, then smiled that folksy, harmless smile. Got it. Thank you for clarifying that. He reached for one of the manila folders, opened it with the casual air of a man checking his grocery list, and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Let me direct your attention to January 15, 2019. Do you recall what happened that day? Schiff shrugged. Senator, I attend hundreds of meetings. Unless you can give me more context. This was a classified briefing, Kennedy said, his voice still friendly. Gang of 8 regarding Russian development of hypersonic missile systems. The briefing was held in the Schiff. That's the sensitive compartmented information facility in the Capitol Visitor Center. It began at 2:15 p.m. Were you there? Schiff's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. If the attendance record says I was there. Oh, I've got the attendance record. Kennedy pulled out another sheet, held it up so the cameras could see it. Signed attendance log required for all Gang of 8 briefings. That's your signature, isn't it? Even from 20 feet away. Schiff's distinctive scrawl was visible. Yes, that's my signature. So, you attended this classified briefing about Russian hypersonic missiles. Briefing started at 2:15, ended at Kennedy checked the log. 4:47 p.m. That's 2 hours and 32 minutes. Quite detailed briefing. It was an important topic. I'm sure it was. National security always is. Kennedy sat down the attendance log and picked up another document. After the briefing ended, where did you go? I don't recall specifically. Did you go back to your office? I believe so. You believe so or you did? Schiff's tone sharpened. Senator, this was over 5 years ago. I don't remember every movement. But you do remember attending the briefing. The log shows I was there. Right? And you went back to your office afterward? Yes. What time did you leave the Capitol that evening? Schiff spread his hands. I have no idea. I'm here most evenings until Kennedy held up another sheet. Capitol security log shows you scanned out of the building at 5:23 p.m. Does that sound accurate? If that's what the record shows. It is. You left at 5:23 p.m. Kennedy sat down the security log. Paused. Looked at Schiff with an expression of mild curiosity. Now, here's what I find it interesting. The room seemed to lean forward collectively. At 6:15 p.m. that same evening, 1 hour and 22 minutes after you left the Capitol, your investment account at Merrill Lynch executed a trade. A sale. $47 worth of Rithon stock. The first murmur rippled through the gallery. Rithon, Kennedy continued, as if he hadn't heard the reaction. Being one of the primary defense contractors working on American hypersonic missile defense systems, which was discussed in some detail during that classified briefing you attended earlier that day. Schiff's face remained neutral, but his knuckles whitened slightly as he gripped the table edge. Senator, as I explained, my financial advisor handles no, Mr. Steinberg, we'll get to him. Kennedy smiled that gentle smile again. I just wanted to establish the timeline. Classified briefing about Russian missiles. 2.5 hours later. You leave the Capitol. 1 hour after that, your account dumps $47 in Rithon stock. He let the words hang in the air. Coincidence? Schiff said, recovering his composure. Yes, tech and defense stocks fluctuate constantly. My advisor monitors market conditions. Coincidence? Kennedy repeated, nodding thoughtfully. Okay, let's talk about another coincidence. He reached for a different folder. Kennedy opened the second folder with theatrical slowness. Like a card player, revealing a royal flush one card at a time. But his expression remained pleasant. Almost apologetic. As if he regretted having to bring up such tedious matters. February 8, 2019. Another classified briefing. This one was about Chinese industrial espionage targeting American semiconductor companies. Do you recall attending? I don't have my calendar in front of me, Schiff said carefully. Kennedy helpfully slid a document across the table. Took the liberty of bringing it. That's a copy of your official congressional calendar for February 2019. See that entry on the 8th classified brief SIF 10 Pro. That's the semiconductor briefing. Schiff glanced at the calendar without touching it. If that's what my calendar says. It is. Briefing ran from 10 a.m. to 11:45 a.m. and at 2:17 p.m. that same day. Same day. Your investment account purchased $63 of Intel stock. Another murmur. Louder this time. Intel, Kennedy said, being one of the specific companies mentioned in that briefing as a primary target of Chinese espionage. According to the briefing summary, he held up another document. The intelligence community assessed that Chinese theft of Intel's manufacturing processes posed a quote significant threat to American technological superiority unquote. This is circumstantial, Schiff said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Tech stocks were surging in early 2019. Everyone was buying Intel. Everyone wasn't sitting in classified briefings about Chinese targeting of Intel 3 hours before buying. Kennedy interrupted, and for the first time, his voice had an edge. But I understand your point. One coincidence, maybe two coincidences, possible. So let me show you some more coincidences. And he stood up, which was unusual enough that even Chairman Graham looked surprised and walked to an easel that had been set up behind his desk. A large poster board covered with black cloth sat on the easel. Kennedy pulled the cloth away in one smooth motion. The revealed chart looked like something from a prosecutor's murder board. Two parallel timelines ran across the top. One marked classified briefings in red. The other marked stock trades in blue. Between them, dozens of lines connected red dots to blue dots, creating a web that was impossible to ignore. This, Kennedy said, turning to face the room, represents 18 months of your financial activity. Cross-referenced with your classified briefing attendance. January 2019 through June 2020. He picked up a laser pointer and began walking through the chart. March 3rd Road. Classified briefing on North Korean cyber attack capabilities. 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. red dot. Same day. 3:45 p.m. your account shorts. That means bets against $85 worth of cybersecurity stocks, including CrowdStrike, Palo Alto Networks, and Fiery. Blue dot red line connecting them. April 12th. Briefing on Iranian drone technology and potential threats to commercial aviation. Red dot. Next day. Not same day. Next day. Your account purchases $52 in defense contractor stocks. Specifically companies producing anti-drone systems. Rithon again. Plus Northrop Grumman. Blue dot. Red line. May 7th briefing on Chinese advances in hypersonic technology. Red dot same day 4:30 p.m. your account moves 120.000 lured into aerospace and defense stocks. Blue dot red line. Kennedy's laser pointer danced across the chart like a conductor's baton. And with each connection, the pattern became more damning. June 19th. Briefing on Russian Arctic military expansion and implications for Northern Sea route security. Red dot. Same day. 5:15 p.m. your account purchases $73 in Arctic shipping and oil exploration companies. Blue dot. Red line. July 23rd Road. Briefing on Middle East instability and potential disruption to oil supplies. Red dot. Within 3 hours, your account purchases $94 oil futures. Blue dot. Red line. The gallery wasn't murmuring anymore. It was dead silent except for Kennedy's voice and the soft click of the laser pointer. August 8th briefing on vulnerabilities in the power grid. Red dot. Same day. Your account buys $67 in alternative energy stocks. Blue dot. Red line. September 14th. Briefing on pharmaceutical supply chain risks. Red dot. Next day. Your account purchases 81.000 ERS in domestic pharmaceutical manufacturers. Blue dot. Red line. Kennedy lowered the laser pointer and turned to face Schiff directly. Shall I continue because I've got 17 more? Schiff's lawyer seated behind him was writing furiously on a legal pad. Schiff himself sat rigid, his face carefully blank. These are cherry-picked examples. Schiff said, I attended hundreds of briefings. If you look at enough data points. Cherry-picked. Kennedy repeated. He walked back to his desk, picked up a stapled document, and held it up. This is a statistical analysis prepared by Dr. Jennifer Martinez, professor of data science at MIT. Had her examine your trading patterns. He read from the report. In the 18-month period, analyzed Representative Schiff attended 47 classified briefings on the House Intelligence Committee. Within 24 hours of 41 of those briefings, 41 out of 47, his investment accounts executed trades in securities directly related to the subject matter of the briefing. Kennedy looked up. That's an 87% correlation rate. Dr. Martinez calculated the probability of this occurring by pure chance. He paused for effect. 1 in 8.7 billion. The silence was suffocating. To put that in perspective, Kennedy continued, his voice almost gentle now. You're more likely to be struck by lightning twice in the same day while winning the Powerball jackpot. That's how unlikely it is that this pattern is coincidence. He set down the report. But maybe Dr. Martinez is biased. Maybe she's a partisan hack. So all looked into her background. Turns out she donated $2,700 to Hillary Clinton in 2016 and another $2,700 in the primary. She's a Democrat. Representative Schiff, a Democrat mathematician, is telling us that your trading pattern is statistically impossible to explain by chance. Schiff opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Market timing is not. This isn't market timing, Kennedy said flatly. This is information timing. And the information came from classified briefings. He sat back down, reached for yet another folder. Now, you told us that Mr. Steinberg handles all your trades. That you're too busy to personally manage your portfolio. That you don't give him instructions on specific trades. That's correct. So these trades, 41 trades, perfectly timed to classified briefings. Those were all Mr. Steinberg's independent decisions. My advisor has discretion to yes or no. Representative, did you personally instruct Mr. Steinberg to make these specific trades? I don't recall every conversation with my financial advisor over 18 months. It's a simple question. Did you or did you not tell Mr. Steinberg what to buy and sell? Schiff's jaw clenched. I may have occasionally shared my general thoughts on market conditions. General thoughts. Okay. Kennedy opened the new folder. We subpoenaed Mr. Steinberg's phone records. Schiff went very still. And here's what we found. On January 15, 2019, the day of the Russian missile briefing, you called Mr. Steinberg at 5:34 p.m. That's 11 minutes after you left the Capitol. The call lasted 11 minutes. At 6:15 p.m., your Rithon stock was sold. Kennedy pulled out more phone logs, spreading them across his desk like playing cards. February 8, after the Chinese semiconductor briefing, you didn't call. You texted at 1:52 p.m. 25 minutes later. $63 of Intel stock was purchased. March 3, road. Text message at 3:22 p.m. Trade executed at 3:45 p.m. April 12. Phone call at 4:47 p.m. lasting 7 minutes. Next morning. Defense contractor stocks purchased. May 7. Senator Schiff interrupted. And now there was real strain in his voice. I'm allowed to communicate with my financial advisor. There's nothing improper about you're allowed to discuss your personal finances. Kennedy agreed. You are not allowed to share classified information. But here's the interesting thing. He stood again, walked around his desk, and approached Schiff's table. Up close, face to face. His voice dropped to just above a whisper. But the microphones caught every word. We interviewed Mr. Steinberg, under oath. He gave us a sworn statement. From his jacket pocket, Kennedy produced a folded document and laid it on the table in front of Schiff. Mr. Steinberg states, and quote, Representative Schiff personally directed each of the trades in question. None were initiated on my independent judgment. Each trade was executed pursuant to specific instructions from Representative Schiff, typically provided within hours of his return from Washington. The room exploded. Reporters were typing frantically. Gallery spectators were whispering urgently. Chairman Graham had to gavel for order twice. Kennedy returned to his seat, waiting for quiet to return. So, Representative, it appears we have a contradiction. You say Mr. Steinberg managed your portfolio independently. Mr. Steinberg says you personally directed every single trade. He's under oath. Are you prepared to testify under oath that he's lying? Schiff's lawyer leaned forward, whispered something urgent in his ear. Schiff shook his head slightly, then spoke carefully. I want to be clear. I never shared classified information with my financial advisor. Any conversations we had about my portfolio were based on publicly available. We also subpoenaed your text messages, Kennedy said. And there it was. The moment. The instant when Schiff's carefully maintained composure cracked. Just for a second. Barely a flicker. But Kennedy saw it. So did everyone in the front row. Fear. Kennedy didn't rush. He let the words, "We also subpoenaed your text messages," settle over the room like fallout. He took a sip of water, adjusted his papers, made a little note on his legal pad, all while Schiff sat frozen, his mind clearly racing through 18 months of text message history, trying to remember what he'd written. What could be traced? What could be explained away? Finally, Kennedy looked up. Your phone number ending in 4782. That's your personal cell phone, correct? I have several phones. The iPhone registered to your personal account, not your congressional account, the one you use for family, friends, personal business, that one ending in 4782. Yes, and you text from that phone regularly. Of course. To Mr. Steinberg. A pause sometimes. Kennedy pulled out a new stack of papers. These appeared to be printouts of text message threads complete with timestamps and phone numbers highlighted in yellow. Let me read you a text message sent from your number 4782 to Mr. Steinberg's number on January 15, 2019 at 5:34 p.m. same time as that phone call I mentioned earlier. He cleared his throat and read in a flat neutral tone. Dump Rithon now. We'll explain later. The room inhaled collectively. That's your phone number. That's Mr. Steinberg's phone number. That's the timestamp. At 6:15 p.m., 41 minutes later, $47 of Rithon stock was sold. Kennedy looked up. What did you mean by we'll explain later? What explanation did you owe him for suddenly dumping defense contractor stock? Schiff's face had gone pale. That message could mean anything. Market analysts were predicting. Let me read another one. Kennedy didn't wait for Schiff to finish. February 8, 2019, 1:52 p.m. from you to Steinberg by Intel Big. Trust me on this. He emphasized the last four words. Trust me on this. Why would he need to trust you? What did you know that would require his trust? I'm entitled to my opinion on market. March 3rd Road, 3:22 p.m. Short cybersecurity. All of it. Do it today. Kennedy's voice remained level, but each word landed like a hammer. You didn't say consider shorting or what do you think about shorting? You said do it today. That's an order, not a suggestion. He pulled out another page. April 12th. Defense contractors heavy buy, especially anti-drone tech. April 12th was the day after you received a classified briefing on Iranian drone threats. Another page. May 7th. Aerospace is going to move. Get in before everyone else does. Before everyone else does. What did you know that everyone else didn't know? Representative Schiff's lawyer was pulling on his sleeve, trying to get him to invoke his Fifth Amendment rights. But Schiff waved him off. His face had hardened into a mask of defiance. These messages are being taken out of context. Context, Kennedy said. Okay, let's provide some context. He picked up a document with several highlighted sections. June 19, 5:15 p.m. This one's particularly interesting. You texted Steinberg. Just got briefed on something big. Arctic region. Get into shipping companies operating northern routes. Can't say more, but trust me. Kennedy sat down the page and looked directly at Schiff. Just got briefed on something big. That was a classified Gang of 8 briefing about Russian Arctic militarization. You literally told your financial advisor that you'd been briefed on classified information and he should trade on it. You can't say more because it's classified. But trust me. He pulled out more pages. His voice building momentum now. July 23rd Road, Middle East about to blow up. Oil futures. Now. That was 3 hours after a briefing on Iranian threats to Saudi oil infrastructure. August 8th. Information I can't discuss yet. But power grid vulnerability is real. Alt energy play. September 14th. Supply chain stuff we talked about in private is happening. Domestic pharma. Big position. Kennedy stood holding the stack of printed text messages like prosecutors' exhibits. Every single text had just read was sent within 1 hour. 1 hour of a classified briefing, and in several of them you explicitly referenced being briefed, having information you couldn't discuss, knowing something in advance. He walked to the chart again, pointing at the web of connections. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't market insight. This was classified information being monetized in real time. Briefing happens. You text your broker. Money gets made. Schiff finally stood, his voice rising. This is a partisan witch hunt. You're twisting innocent communications to fit a predetermined narrative. The FBI agent who executed the subpoenas on your phone records, Kennedy said calmly, sitting back down, is a registered Democrat who voted for you in your last 3 elections. The federal magistrate who signed the warrant is someone you personally recommended for the bench in 2017. The statistician who analyzed the data donated to Hillary Clinton twice. The bank that provided your financial records did so pursuant to a lawfully executed federal warrant. He steepled his fingers. Don't talk to me about partisan witch hunts. Sir, this investigation has been bipartisan, thorough, and by the book, and the evidence is overwhelming. Kennedy opened yet another folder. How many did he have? And pulled out what looked like a spreadsheet. Let's talk about the results of these trades. Because motive matters, doesn't it? Why would someone risk their career, their reputation, their freedom to trade on classified information? The answer is obvious: money. He held up the spreadsheet so the cameras could zoom in. In the 18 months we analyzed, January 2019 through June 2020, the S&P 500 index returned 14%. Not bad. That's what an average investor would have made. Kennedy's finger traced down a column. Your portfolio representative Schiff returned 127%. Gasps and murmurs erupted. Kennedy raised his voice slightly to talk over them. You started this period with approximately $1.2 million in investable assets. You ended with $2.7 million. A profit of $1.5 million in 18 months. While the market returned 14%, you returned 127%. He sat down the spreadsheet. That's not skill. That's not lucky timing. That's not market insight. That's ear information. Information that other Americans couldn't access. Information that soldiers and intelligence officers risked their lives to collect. Information you swore an oath to protect. Kennedy's voice, which had been building, suddenly dropped back to that soft Louisiana draw. And you used it to make $1.5 million. The silence was absolute. But wait, Kennedy continued, reaching for another folder. There's more. Kennedy pulled out what appeared to be an organizational chart. Names in boxes connected by lines with dollar amounts noted next to each name. Because it wasn't just you. Was it? He placed the chart on the easel next to the timeline. At the center was a box labeled Adam Schiff. Radiating outward were 7 other boxes, each with a name and a series of dates and dollar amounts. Your brother-in-law, David Schiff. Not a coincidence on the name, he's married to your sister, Rebecca. David made 47 trades during this 18-month period. 39 of them, 83%, occurred within 48 hours of classified briefings you attended. Kennedy's laser pointer moved to another box. Your chief of staff, Patrick Boland, made 31 trades, 27 of them within 48 hours of your briefings. Another box. Your campaign treasurer, Lisa Chen, made 23 trades, 19 of them within 48 hours of your briefings. He stepped back, letting the chart speak for itself. We found 8 people in your immediate circle. Family members, staff, political associates who demonstrated the same statistically impossible pattern of trading success. All connected to you. All trading on the same schedule. All making returns that wildly exceeded market averages. Kennedy picked up another document. We analyzed the total profits across this network. $4.7 million in 18 months. All traceable back to information you alone had access to. He turned back to Schiff. This wasn't just insider trading. This was insider trading as a business model. You turned your position on the Intelligence Committee into a profit center. Not just for yourself, for your family, your staff, your political operation. Schiff's lawyer was now actively trying to get him to stop talking. But Schiff's anger had overridden his judgment. These people have their own financial advisors, their own investment strategies. The fact that they happened to make successful trades all on the same days. Kennedy interrupted. All in the same sectors. All within hours of classified briefings. Come on, Representative, do you really expect anyone in this room to believe that's coincidence? He pulled out more phone records. We found 73 text messages between you and your brother-in-law, David, discussing opportunities and information and timing. We found emails between you and Patrick Boland where you explicitly wrote an all recent briefing suggests defense sector movement. Might want to adjust accordingly. Kennedy looked up. You weren't even subtle about it. He walked back to his desk, sat down, and pulled out one final document. This one was thicker than the others looked like. It might be 50 or 60 pages. And then there's this. This is a transcript of your appearance on CNN on March 19, 2019. You remember that interview? Schiff said nothing. Let me refresh your memory. You were there to discuss ethics in Congress. The host asked you about members of Congress trading stocks. And you said, I've got your exact words here. You said we must have strict ethics in Congress. The American people deserve leaders who put country over personal gain. Anyone who uses their position for financial benefit is betraying public trust. Kennedy sat down the transcript. You said that 2 weeks after using classified intelligence on North Korean cyber threats to short $85 worth of cybersecurity stocks, you sat on national television and lectured America about ethics while actively profiting from classified information. He leaned back in his chair. And that wasn't the only time. We found 12 separate television appearances, op-eds, and speeches where you discussed congressional ethics, transparency, and putting country first, all while running this operation. Kennedy pulled out printouts of tweets. Here's one from your Twitter account. June 2019. No member of Congress should profit from their service. Our duty is to the American people, not our bank accounts. You tweeted that on June 20th. The day after you made $73 on Arctic shipping stocks following a classified briefing. Another tweet. August 2019. Those who abuse their positions for personal enrichment have no place in public service. Tweeted 3 days after your power grid trade netted $67. Kennedy sat down the tweets and looked at Schiff with something that might have been disappointment or might have been contempt. You didn't just commit insider trading, representative. You committed it while lecturing everyone else about ethics. You stood on your soapbox, pointing fingers, demanding accountability from others, all while doing the exact thing you condemned. He paused. You want to know what word comes to mind? I'll tell you. It's that word you used earlier. Unconscionable. You were right. It is unconscionable. What you did is unconscionable. Kennedy opened one more folder. The last one. Inside was a single sheet of paper with several bullet points. Which brings us to why we're here today. What happens now? Kennedy lifted the single sheet of paper, held it up so everyone could see it bore the official seal of the Senate Ethics Committee, and began to read in a voice that had lost all its folksy warmth. Based on the evidence presented to this committee, including but not limited to 41 instances of suspicious trading activity, 73 text messages and emails indicating coordination, sworn testimony from financial advisors, statistical analysis demonstrating impossibility of coincidence, and financial records showing $1.5 million in personal profit, plus $4.7 million in network profits. He looked up. This committee has no choice but to take the following actions. Schiff sat perfectly still, his face ashen. 1. This matter will be immediately referred to the Department of Justice for criminal investigation. Potential charges include conspiracy to disclose classified information, securities fraud under the Stock Act, wire fraud, and making false statements to Congress. Kennedy's voice was steady, methodical, almost clerical. Now, 2. This matter will be referred to the House Ethics Committee with a recommendation for expulsion proceedings. The evidence suggests Representative Schiff violated House rules regarding classified information, financial disclosure, and ethical conduct. 3. This matter will be referred to the Securities and Exchange Commission for civil enforcement action regarding securities fraud and insider trading violations. 4. This matter will be referred to the FBI's Counter-Intelligence Division for assessment of whether Representative Schiff's conduct created any national security vulnerabilities or compromised any ongoing intelligence operations. He set down the paper. But before it conclude, I want to say something for the record. Kennedy removed his reading glasses, rubbed his eyes, and when he looked up at Schiff, there was genuine sadness in his expression. You know what the worst part of this is? It's not the money. It's not even the classified information abuse. Although that's bad enough. The worst part is the betrayal. He gestured to the gallery. Americans trusted you. They elected you 17 times. They gave you access to the nation's most sensitive secrets because they believed you would protect those secrets, not profit from them. Intelligence officers in the field, soldiers in combat zones, analysts working 18-hour days. They all did their jobs believing that the information they collected would be used to keep America safe, not to make Adam Schiff rich. Kennedy's voice hardened. And you stood there over and over again and lectured everyone else about ethics, about integrity, about putting country first. You impeached a president, sat on television, and talked about the rule of law, tweeted about congressional accountability. All while doing this, he waved his hand at the evidence-covered desk. You said earlier that no one is above the law. You were right. No one is above the law. Not presidents, not senators, and not you. Kennedy began gathering his folders into a neat stack. For years, you've investigated others. You've held hearings. You've demanded documents, subpoenaed witnesses, issued reports. You've positioned yourself as the guardian of accountability in Washington. He picked up the stack of folders. All of them, the entire investigation, condensed into 2 feet of manila folders, and looked at them thoughtfully. Well, Representative Schiff, today you finally got what you've been demanding all along. Accountability. Real accountability. Not the political theater kind, but the kind that comes with evidence. Statistics, phone records, text messages, and sworn testimony. Kennedy began walking toward the door, then stopped and turned back. One more thing. You said it would be unconscionable to use classified information for personal gain. You said anyone who did that would be betraying their oath and betraying the American people. He paused at the door. You were right about that, too. And then he walked out, leaving Schiff sitting alone at the witness table. Cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions, and 47 manila folders stacked on Kennedy's desk. Like a paper monument to everything Schiff had done, Chairman Graham gave for order. But the room had already descended into chaos. Schiff's lawyer was pulling him toward a side exit. Democratic committee members sat stone-faced, unwilling to defend, but unable to condemn. Republican members were already drafting press releases. But in the back row of the gallery, barely noticed in the commotion, sat 3 FBI agents and 2 DOJ prosecutors. They'd heard every word, seen every document, taken notes on every exhibit, and they were already planning the next phase. Because Kennedy had done his job. He'd built the case, presented the evidence, made it impossible to ignore or explain away. Now it was their turn. Week 1. The investigation begins. The Washington Post headline was simple. DOJ opens criminal investigation into Schiff trading scandal. But it was the sub-headline that made Schiff's remaining allies WSE. Former Chief of Staff granted immunity. Cooperating with federal prosecutors. Patrick Boland had been Schiff's right hand for 6 years. They'd worked late nights together. Strategized together. Boland had been in the room for dozens of those classified briefings. Had seen Schiff on his phone immediately afterward. Had watched the pattern develop in real time. And now Boland was talking. The first concrete detail emerged on a Thursday afternoon. Leaked to Politico by someone close to the investigation, Boland had provided prosecutors with a contemporaneous diary. He'd kept a CIA move that many congressional staffers made in the Trump era. Except Boland's diary didn't document Trump's behavior. It documented his bosses. March 3 Road, 2019 has received classified brief NK cyber capabilities at 10 a.m. immediately after called Steinberg. Told me later he saw an opportunity. Evening News reports AS's portfolio shorted cybersecurity stocks earlier that day. I'm keeping this record in case this ever becomes a problem. The diary contained 38 such entries. When the news broke, Schiff's lawyer released a terse statement. Representative Schiff maintains his innocence and looks forward to defending himself against these politically motivated accusations. But privately, according to 3 sources who spoke to the Los Angeles Times, Schiff was panicking. He'd called an emergency meeting with his remaining inner circle. 5 people, where there used to be 20. Half had stopped returning his calls. The other half had hired their own lawyers. He kept asking if Boland could be lying. One attendee told the Times, "We had to explain that Boland had contemporaneous notes. Timestamps. That he'd been documenting this for over a year." Adam's face just crumbled. Week 2. The party turns. The Democratic Party's abandonment of Schiff didn't happen all at once. It happened in stages, each one more devastating than the last. First came the quiet suggestions. Senior Democrats calling Schiff's office, speaking in careful language, maybe take a step back from public appearances. Perhaps focus on district work for a while. The party needs to focus on the midterms. Schiff ignored them. On day 9, after Kennedy's hearing, he appeared on MSNBC's Morning Joe, attempting to control the narrative. These allegations are based on circumstantial evidence and statistical anomalies. He said his practiced television confidence firmly in place. I've served this country faithfully for 17 years. Joe Scarborough, who defended Schiff through both Trump impeachments, interrupted him. Congressman, I've been reading the committee's report. The text messages aren't circumstantial. Just got briefed on something big. That's a direct quote from your phone. How do you explain that? Schiff's face tightened. That text taken out of context. What context makes that okay? Scarborough pressed. You literally told your financial advisor you'd been briefed on classified information and he should trade on it. The interview lasted 4 more uncomfortable minutes before Schiff's communication director called in and said they were having technical difficulties. The segment went viral, accumulating 4.2 million views by evening. That night, House Minority Leader Hockey Jeff released a statement. The allegations against Representative Schiff are deeply troubling. While everyone deserves due process, the evidence presented to the Senate Ethics Committee raises serious questions about judgment and conduct. I have advised Representative Schiff that he should temporarily step aside from his position on the Intelligence Committee pending the outcome of the DOJ investigation. It was a masterclass in political distancing, not calling for resignation not yet, but making clear that Schiff was now toxic. By the end of week 2, Schiff had been removed from the Intelligence Committee. The vote was 38. Only his closest allies voted against his removal, and even they looked miserable doing it. Week 3, the personal cost. The criminal investigation was one thing. The political isolation was another. But it was the personal toll that finally broke through Schiff's armor. His brother-in-law, David, was indicted on day 15. The charges: conspiracy to commit securities fraud, wire fraud, and making false statements to federal investigators. The indictment detailed how David had made 39 trades based on information that could only have come from classified briefings attended by his brother-in-law. Representative Adam Schiff, Schiff's sister, Rebecca, filed for divorce 2 days later. The family fracture became public when Rebecca released a statement through her attorney. I was unaware of any illegal activities. I trusted my husband and my brother. That trust has been irreparably broken. I am cooperating fully with federal authorities. People magazine ran the story with the headline, Schiff's scandal tears family apart. But it was his own constituents' rejection that seemed to wound Schiff most deeply. On day 18, he held a town hall in his Burbank district. Something he'd done dozens of times over 17 years. Usually, these were friendly affairs, some policy questions, occasional opposition voices, but mostly supportive home district folks. This time, the high school auditorium was packed with angry voters. You made us look like fools, shouted a woman who identified herself as a teacher. I defended you on Facebook for years. I argued with my family about you and you were doing this the whole time. A man in a Marines veteran cap stood up. Those intelligence briefing soldiers die getting that information and you used it to buy stocks. What kind of person does that? Schiff tried to respond, tried to explain, tried to deploy the rhetorical skills that had made him a formidable politician. But the crowd wasn't having it. They'd heard the evidence, seen the text messages, looked at the statistical analysis. One voter summed up the mood. Sir, we didn't mind that you were liberal. We didn't mind that you went after Trump hard. But we can't forgive this. You betrayed us. The town hall ended early when Schiff's security detail advised him the crowd was becoming too hostile. Video of him being escorted out a side door looking smaller and older than anyone remembered played on loop across cable news. The unexpected testimony. The most damaging revelation came from an unexpected source. Marcus Steinberg himself, Schiff's financial advisor, facing his own potential criminal exposure, agreed to sit for an interview with the FBI. His attorney negotiated limited immunity in exchange for complete cooperation. Excerpts from Steinberg's testimony were leaked to the Wall Street Journal and published on day 19. FBI agent, Did Representative Schiff ever explicitly state that his trade instructions were based on classified information? Steinberg: Not in those exact words. No, but it was obvious. He'd call me right after returning from Washington. Always urgent. Always specific. Buy this sector now before the news breaks. Sell this before everyone else figures it out. He'd say things like, I can't tell you why yet. But trust me, this is going to move. What else could that mean? Agent? Did you ever tell him you were uncomfortable with this Steinberg once in early 2019? I said something like, Adam, if you're trading on inside information that's illegal and I can't be part of it. He got very cold, told me I was his advisor, not his conscience, said if I had a problem with his instructions, he'd find someone else. I didn't push it. I should have, but I didn't. Agent, why not Steinberg? Because he was making me a lot of money. 2. I get a percentage of returns. His portfolio was my best performer. I told myself maybe he just had good instincts. But I knew, deep down, I knew the guilt in Steinberg's testimony was palpable. And it made the perfect counterpoint to Schiff's continued denials. Steinberg was admitting culpability, expressing remorse, acknowledging what everyone could see. Schiff was still claiming innocence. Kennedy's follow-up. Senator Kennedy characteristically said little publicly after his hearing. He let the evidence do the talking. But on day 21, he agreed to a single interview with 60 Minutes. Sitting in his Senate office surrounded by law books and Louisiana memorabilia. Kennedy was asked why he'd pursued the investigation so doggedly. Because nobody else would, Kennedy said simply. Everybody in Washington knew something was off about Schiff's trades. It was talked about quietly. But he was powerful. He was on the right committees and he was useful to people. So nobody wanted to look too close. But you did, the interviewer prompted. Did because was on the Intelligence Committee too. Sat in some of those same briefings and saw how sensitive that information was. We're talking about intelligence that could get people killed if it's mishandled. And he was using it to play the stock market. Kennedy leaned forward. Here's what people need to understand. Those classified briefings, that information doesn't just appear magically. Intelligence officers spend years building sources. Soldiers put their lives at risk. Analysts work around the clock. And when Schiff took that information and used it for personal profit, he didn't just betray the American people. He betrayed every person in the intelligence community who trusted that their work would be used to keep America safe. Not to make politicians rich. The 60 Minutes piece included interviews with former intelligence officers, all speaking anonymously, all expressing the same sentiment: betrayal. If Schiff can profit from my work, why am I risking my life? One CIA officer said. Their voice disguised. What's the point of gathering intelligence if it just becomes a stock tip for congressmen? The broader reckoning? By week 3, the Schiff scandal had triggered something larger. A national conversation about congressional stock trading. Senators Elizabeth Warren and Josh Hawley, polar opposites, politically announced a joint bill to ban all stock trading by members of Congress and their immediate families. The Schiff case is extreme, Warren said at a press conference. But it exposes a system that's been broken for years. Members of Congress shouldn't be able to trade stocks at all. Period. The potential for abuse is too great. And the temptation is too strong. Hawley, standing beside her, added, this is one of the few issues that unites populists on both left and right. Regular Americans can't trade on insider information. Why should congressmen? The bill gained 67 co-sponsors in 48 hours. A stunning display of bipartisan momentum in a polarized Congress. Schiff's scandal had become a catalyst, not just for his own downfall, but for systemic reform. The final image. On day 22, photographers captured an image that would define the scandal more than any hearing transcript or news report. Adam Schiff leaving the Hoover building after his second day of FBI interviews. Walking alone, no lawyer beside him. They were in a different car. No staff. They'd all retained separate counsel. No supporters. They'd all gone silent. Just Schiff in a wrinkled suit carrying a briefcase, looking 20 years older than he had a month ago. The photo ran on front pages across the country. The New York Times captioned it simply, "Alone," because that's what he was now. Alone with the consequences of choices made in the moment. Trades executed in the hour after briefings. Text messages sent without thinking they'd ever be read in a Senate hearing room. Alone with the statistical impossibility of coincidence. alone with the $1.5 million in profit and the $4.7 million network he'd built. Alone with 73 federal charges being prepared by DOJ prosecutors and alone with the knowledge that Senator Kennedy's words would follow him forever. You were right. No one is above the law. Not presidents. Not senators. And not you. Kennedy's next case. In his office that evening, Kennedy saw the photo. 2. He studied it for a long moment. Then filed it in a folder marked Completed Investigations. But there were other folders on his desk. Other patterns that didn't quite add up. Other senators and representatives whose trading returns seemed too good to be true. Kennedy pulled out a fresh legal pad and began making notes. Because accountability wasn't a single hearing. It wasn't a single investigation. It was a commitment, a standard, a principle that applied equally to everyone, no matter how powerful they seemed. And Senator John Kennedy had more work to do. He opened the next folder. Inside was a timeline, phone records, and trading data for another member of Congress. Different name, different state, same suspicious pattern. Kennedy picked up his pen and began to write. Because in Washington there were always more folders.